I'll hand it over to you, ma'am. Yeah. Good evening. A very warm welcome to our esteemed speakers and participants in the second masterclass on climate adaptive heat action plans, which is organized as a part of South Asia Heat Health Information Network. SAHI is an independent scientific platform for scientists, health experts, policymakers, government and stakeholders to collaborate and evolve strategies that expedite heat stress management in South Asian cities and beyond. This masterclass series under SAHI is held under the masterclass series on heat stress and aims to share actionable information that can be used for a better heat wave management in cities, states, and countries. Today's masterclass will enable the cities to efficiently prepare, mitigate, and adapt to the heat stress induced by climate change. For the masterclass, we have with us our respected speakers and experts. The opening remarks will be delivered by Professor Jyoti Parikh, Executive Director, IRADE. She is former member of Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change India and is also recipient of Nobel Peace Prize awarded to IPCC authors in 2007. The masterclass will be delivered by Mr. Rohit Magotra, Deputy Director, IRADE. He leads the climate change and urban development work at IRADE and is principal investigator of project on climate adaptive action plans to manage heat stress in Indian cities, heat hotspots delineation. Special remarks will be delivered by Dr. S.C. Bhan. He is Scientist F in Agromet Advisory Service Division of the Indian Meteorological Department. He has worked in the Agromet and the operational weather forecast services at the state, regional, and the national weather forecasting centers by providing expertise in weather and Agromet services. He has been associated with Heat Health Early Warning Systems of IMD since its beginning in 2015 and integrate it with the national, state, city level efforts through systemic heat action plans. Question and answer sessions will be moderated by Professor Ajit Tyagi. He is Senior Advisor IRADE and a former DG IMD Government of India. He is also member of World Tropical Meteorology Research Group of the World Meteorological Organization, and he has served as Koteshwar Chair Professor with Ministry of Earth Sciences in the area of weather, environment, and climate till March 2015. Unfortunately, Professor Salimul Haq could not join due to delay in his travel to London, as his connecting flight from Doha to London has got delayed. Over to you, Professor Jyoti Parikh, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Nimisha, and I welcome all of you, especially Dr. S. Sivan, Professor Ajit Tyagi, Rohit Magotra, and all the invitees, attendees, and my IRADE colleagues. I extend warm welcome. As you know, IRADE says research and action for development, and now having worked on this area of heat stress for nearly 2 to 3 years, we are ready to do capacity building as well. And as you know, IPCC 6th assessment report is out, and at least the working group report number 1, and it explains how science and intensity and frequency of climate change is increasing, and that leads to stress. We have been seeing that from 2015 to 2020, it has been a 5th consecutive year of high temperature, according to WMO. IRADE is actively communicating and learnings gained from our research on climate change to all the key stakeholders. Earlier, we also did the work on urban resilience and how municipalities should be prepared. Now, this is in the area of disaster resilience. But that time, one thought that sudden disasters are more important. But now we see that the slow disasters which are creeping in, has now caught up with us, and heat stress is becoming in a very issue of a large proportion. And this is not only true of India, but also South Asia. Today, you will be seeing years of work combined in a small presentation, put it all together in a capsule. And it includes the case studies from other people's case studies from Canada to Southeast, Far East, and many other countries. It also says what to do in terms of how to recognize it, and how even half a degree can make a big difference, and also what type of actions to be taken in terms of policy people who are interested in this field. So it has something for everybody, the academics, the think tank people, as well as the practitioners and policymakers. I look forward to hearing your views on this subject, and I'm happy that our IRADE has reached this stage where it can hold such a master class. I'm glad that Dr. S.C. Tyagi has also joined us. And let's hope that we can together make a difference by propagating this knowledge that we gained over 2-3 years. And IRADE team has been working very hard all this time. And I wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you, Rohit and Nimisha.
Over to you, Rohit, sir.
I think thank you, madam, for your kind words and inputs. I think your presence has already raised the expectation from this session. And I now kindly request Dr. S.C. Van to please give his opening remarks. He has been an ardent supporter of IRADE's work and has contributed to India's achievement on achieving heat action plans, and also widely disseminating the same. So we are, sir, very honored to have your presence here, and we request you to provide your welcome remarks, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rohit. Professor Jyoti Parekh, Professor Ajit Tyagi, other esteemed panelists and participants, a very good afternoon and good evening to all of you. As flagged by Professor Jyoti in the beginning, that IPCC 6th assessment report issued earlier this month, it is already red flagged that the hot extremes, including the heat waves, will become more frequent and more intense across different parts of the globe, including South Asia. And if you see historically, the global surface temperature in last 50 years, they have increased at a rate faster than any time during last 200 years, for which we have a very good confidence on the proxy data. And the report also says that the surface temperatures would continue to rise until at least through this century, even under low emission scenarios. And the global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius will be exceeded during this century, 1.5 degree most likely by middle of the century, and 2 degrees Celsius towards end of the century. That's a very medium range scenario. And even if we take very drastic steps toward reduction of the greenhouse gases, the 1.5 degrees Celsius is now inevitable somewhere in second half of the century, if not towards middle of the century. And associated with this global warming induced by the greenhouse gas emissions, the many changes in climate systems, including the increase in frequency and intensity of heat waves and hot extremes, along with the extreme weather events, are increasing at relatively faster rate than the temperatures. And with every additional increment in global warming and temperature, the increase in extremes would be higher. And the reduction in greenhouse gases, though, is a priority of most of the nations across the world, including India. We in India have very strong commitment towards reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. The process, however, is slow. and the impacts would be rather slower because the gases already emitted in the atmosphere will continue to have their impacts in the coming years and decades to come. But the experience shows that the mitigation measures can really help us reduce the adverse impacts to a large extent and relatively quickly. And the management of heat wave across the world by different countries is a bright example. And the Indian heat wave management system is now world over taken as an exemplary work, which has reduced the heat-related mortalities to this year. It is nil. No heat wave-related deaths are reported in the country this year. And on an average, also the heat wave-related deaths over last 5 years has been the lowest during any 5 years period in the history of the country for which we have reliable data available with us. And this has been possible because we continued and coordinated efforts of NDMA, IMD, academic institutes like those of public health and the NGOs and strong advocacy groups like IRADE and others. But I put that the battle is really far from over. Sustaining this downward trends, reducing the heat-related morbidities, handling the decreased productivity in the industry and other sectors of economy, the increased cost of adaptations, and loss of livelihoods caused by heat-related morbidity, they really need to be our focus in immediate future. And also, let's put it the increased urbanization and greater penetration of air conditioning and vehicles, each compounding these impacts of global warming. And the brighter spot on the horizon is that the global and national efforts are now well aligned to combat the heat waves and heat wave related adverse impacts. The World Meteorological Organization and the World Health Organization now have a joint office in WMO for coordinating these efforts across the communities in the world. The Global Heat Health Information Network, which is an independent, voluntary and member-driven form of scientists, practitioners, advocates, policymakers, has focused on improving the capacity to protect the populations, particularly the vulnerable groups, from the avoidable health risk of extreme heat through efforts on increased awareness, interdisciplinary participations, synthesizing the advances in the science and technology, improved access to the resources and opportunities, and also through identifying and accelerating the actions to address the critical gaps in maybe in research, in knowledge, in plans and practices. And the South Asia Heat Health Information Network, under the premises of which today's masterclass is being organized, is a South Asian arm of the global network, formed with the aim of improving the capacity of the professionals, organizations, and the governments to protect the populations from the preventable health impacts of the extreme temperatures. The network is an excellent regional initiative towards synthesis of the priorities, building the capacity, empowering multi-sector actors, and also for taking effective and informed life-saving plannings and measures across the region. And I'm sure this series of masterclasses started by the South Asia Heat Health Information Network, including the one today's on climate adaptive heat action plans, would create an important, an important awareness and capacity building program and an important stepping stone to create the required awareness, enhanced cooperation among agencies, among the individuals for efficiently prepare, mitigate, and adapt to the heat stress, which is induced primarily by the climate change. And I hope with more such master classes coming and other programs being organized by IRADE, this regional cooperation would increase. And I'm sure we would be able to minimize the impacts of heat-related stress in the region. The region is one of the most vulnerable regions to heat stress, owing to its geography, vulnerability of population, poverty is one of the issues. So my compliments to Irade and Shaheen for taking up this issue, and I wish that we come out with excellent discussions towards the end, and it helps us firm up our actions in future. Thank you very much. Thank you for providing me this opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Rohit.
I think, sir, your session last time, your masterclass, we actually started this masterclass with your masterclass on heat thresholds, and we got an excellent feedback and also appreciation from wide variety of stakeholders in the South Asia. So we thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to further organize important sessions as per the priorities of the stakeholders in near future as well. So moving forward, I will start with this today's masterclass topic. So I will be sharing with you my screen. Just a second. Is it visible?
No, Rohit, we can't see.
Not? Just a second.
Was your file open when you were
Yes,
sharing?
no,
There
that's
it is.
I managed. Thank you. So I think the masterclass which you are organizing today is on climate adaptive heat action plans. So the purpose of this masterclass is to share our experience and also the practices which are being in practice for developing and designing heat action plans. So first of all, I'd like to thank our donors, International Development Research Center Canada, IDRC Canada, and the Global Heat Health Information Network, to which we are a complementary network within South Asia, for their continuous support in evolving the SAHIN and supporting this work. So moving further, I think the first clear point which both Dr. Ban and Madam Tyagi Madam Parikh talked about is about the IPCC assessment report 6. So there is a clear evidence in terms of increase in both intensity and frequency of hot extremes such as warm days, and not only just warm days but also warm nights, and also increase in frequency of the heat waves across the globe. So it's a universal evidence, and there shouldn't be any denial that that heat is something which we have been always facing and cope with. So this evidence is I think primarily to further and strengthen our engagement with a wide variety of the stakeholders, including citizens, scientists, citizens, as well as the government policymakers, to have more action plans and more actions happening on the heat extremes and increasing the preparedness of the communities. So this is something which is looking at the last decade, which has been in the warmest decade in the history of recorded temperatures. And we also have 2015 to 2020 being consecutive warm years, one after the other. And the June and July of 2020 has been the warmest month ever. So it's clearly very evident that the incidences of higher temperatures and increasing heat stress has actually become evident in last decade, and we need to kind of take a strict notice of this and take action. So why we see heat stress as a threat? It's a silent killer, and it's not, which is a slow onset disasters. And there are several global reports which had looked at the impacts of the heat stress. And in 2019, there was a Lancet report which talked about more than 475 million vulnerable population being exposed to the heat waves. So such is the number of the people who are exposed to the heat waves. And again, if no action is taken, and if this kind of a scenario builds in terms of what scientists have been already warning us, the 3-degree scenario, then by 2100 we may have 85 per lakh deaths globally, and more so in the vulnerable population, where we may have more than 100 deaths per 1 lakh population in lower income groups. So such is the impact of the heat stress globally in the near future, so which demands an immediate action. So I will just like you to go through in terms of how heat waves have impacted the globe in last 25 years or so. So I think this has been the tipping point of the heat wave, the Chicago heat wave, which killed more than 700 people in a period of 5 days. So this, there was a mass grave. This is a famous photograph I have borrowed from Dr. Mavlankar's slide, which shows that, there are more than 68 unclaimed bodies, and of which 41 died due to the heat waves. And all this, happened within a period of 2 weeks, where the Cook County in Chicago reported more than 700 deaths. So this was a kind of a alarm, I think, which set the plan, the policymakers and the practitioners to take notice of the heat waves and the disaster which a heat wave could be. I think this is something which is not very well known, but the country Russia heat wave of 2010 killed more than 55,000 people. That's a huge number. So it's not something which happens on only affects the tropical countries or subtropical countries. Heat waves are affecting it's affecting all across the globe. And similarly, European heat waves, these also triggered heat wave action plan in Europe, which killed more than 70,000 people in year of 2003. In India, Ahmedabad, we have almost 800 excess deaths between 1 week of May of 2010 in Ahmedabad, so which become a tipping point for initiating the heat action plans in India. So this is Karachi, right? There's 700 people died in 3 days. 3 days in 2015. So it's again this year we have seen a lot of news related to the heat waves. This is Western North American heat wave killing more than 1,000 people. Jacobabad, this is Jacobabad in Pakistan, where the wet bulb temperature is crossing 35 degrees. I will deal with wet bulb temperatures in my next slides. The temperature touched 50 degrees in summer usually, and now this year it touched 52 degrees centigrade. So so that such incidences of global warming are spreading across the world. And I think this is most talked about event of this year, where the temperature hit 49.6 degrees in Lytton, Canada. That and where the average temperature don't exceed 24 degrees for the month of June. So so it's really something very unpredictable, and one can't say that one country is having lesser risk compared to the other. The risk is spread across the globe, and more so there is a need to be a focused attention and a consensus on taking action. And it's just not affects the humans. It's the Canadian heat waves have estimated killed 1 billion sea creatures within a matter of 3 days. So it's a huge impact on the both plant as well as the animal life, and also which further affects the ecosystem and economies. This is recent, which is from yesterday's news of Spain heat waves, where the maximum temperature touched 46 degrees. and a lot of fish mortality happened. So it's a really a red alert for the humanity if we look at these incidences. These incidences are not sporadic, and these are happening across the globe. Only thing is that might be we need to take much more notice, and also to synthesize information related to such events, and also present it to the policymakers and the citizens. So again, another example of Egypt heat wave affecting the crops, and also the Turkey forest fires, which destroyed the whole pine forest. And it doesn't take up only the pine forest, but the whole ecosystem. There were thousands of the people whose livelihood depends on these forests. So its heat waves and its impacts are not restricted only on the health of the humans, but also they are affecting the livelihoods, productivity of humans. There is increasing evidence now on the same. They are affecting the ecosystem. They are affecting the biodiversity. So a lot of concrete actions has to be taken on heat, and this is something which we need to work together and share our experience. So as a part of this masterclass, we are sharing our experiences of our work, and also synthesizing the partners and other stakeholders' work which is happening on this heat stress action plans in South Asia. Now coming to the heat wave and heat stress terminology, what do we mean by these terminology? So heat wave is something which is a relative phenomena. So what is perceived as a heat wave in India may not be the definition of heat wave in Russia or in France or in Australia. So it's a relative phenomena, but largely there is a uniform acceptability of deviation from the average temperatures. So if it is a high deviation from the average temperatures, then it is considered as a heat waves. In India, we have a heat wave criteria which varies from in hilly areas, coastal, and the plain areas. So it's a geographical variation, and also it's also dependent on the local adaptive capacities as well. So when we define, when the IMD definition of the heat waves, which is considered for the heat alerts in the country. So it is generally taken as 40 degrees centigrade for plains, and at least 30 degrees for the hilly areas, and 37 degrees for the coastal areas. So depending on the ambient air temperatures and also the humidity factors, the heat wave is considered in the various parts of the world. So for example, the Karachi, we have heat stress thresholds. The heat waves declared when the temperature crosses 40 degrees. In Paris, if it is above the average temperature of 23 to 25 degrees centigrade. In Denmark, it is if it exceeds 28 degrees centigrade, and in Australia, Adelaide, it's 35 degrees, or 3 consecutive days over 40 degrees, or 5 straight days above. So there is no universal definition or one definition to fit the heat waves. So it varies across the globe, and it is certainly dependent on various other factors, including the adaptive capacities of the communities who are living in those areas. So this is something I would like to highlight, why we are talking increasingly about climate adaptive heat action plans. Many will argue we have heat action plans and they're enough. They actually, they bring out the nuances of what kind of coordination mechanisms are required, what kind of measures are required, what kind of capacities need to be built. But this is something which I would like to highlight because what we are finding is not just increase in the ambient air temperature, which are what we kind of say, dry bulb temperatures, which are the general temperatures which are being communicated to the citizens, like today's temperature, maybe in Delhi is 36 degrees centigrade. But when we talk about the wet bulb temperature, it's also a measure of the humidity. What kind of a humidity content is there in the atmosphere? So the global climate change research is clearly highlighting that there is not only increase in ambient temperature, but there is also increase in the wet bulb temperature, which means the combination of humidity and the temperature is increasing across the globe. And if we look at the humans thresholds for the wet bulb temperatures, then it is only 35 degrees centigrade. You all know that, you know, the human body temperature is 36.9 degrees centigrade, and we need a temperature, you know, through which this thermal exchange can happen with the atmosphere. What if the external atmospheric temperatures goes beyond 35 degree and the humidity level are 100%, so it's a sure shot fatality. Even if whatever supply of water is provided to us to dehydrate, it's not going to help. And so that's where, you know, the key challenge which is emerging as a wet bulb temperature, and these wet bulb temperatures are fatal. For example, in Karachi heat wave of 2015, the wet bulb never went above 30 degrees. So even at 30 degree wet bulb, we have deaths being reported. And even while we observed in case of UK heat waves, it was 24 degrees centigrade. So it's not just a combination of increase of temperature which is threatening, what increasing humidity level and the humidity which is likely to be fatal. And this is a bad news. Our climate models project, you know, that we would have the occurrences of 35 degrees centigrade wet bulb days by mid of 21st century in South Asia, coastal Middle East, and coastal Southwest North Africa. So it's going to be really very challenging for the human population to cope with the same, and especially for the low income and the developing countries to actually prepare the same. What that's a real threat, and that's where we need to have a climate adaptive heat action plans. So coming to a broad terminology, you know, what do you mean by heat action plans? You know, what heat action plans are: the adaptation measures to manage growing heat stress. They are adaptation measures, and they provide a framework for implementation, coordination, and evaluation of extreme health responses. And these are in form of increasing the preparedness through early warning, coordination, and also by activating the emergency response systems and during the periods of the heat stress. So all these are the important components of the heat action plans. These are the broad 4 components which are widely accepted as a framework. So early warning system is essential, you know, where communities are being warned about, you know, what is likelihood of the heat days or extreme heat days happening, and there an interagency emergency response plan. So it's not just limited to one department. There are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of government agencies, non-government players, and the citizens alike who who are likely to be involved for the emergency response. Public awareness and community outreach, it is very important to increase public awareness and also reach out to the community, building their capacities in understanding the impact of heat stress particularly, and also to implement the practices. The third important component is the capacity building of the medical professionals. You know, how do we enhance the emergency preparedness of the hospital, health workers, so that it's the emergency is not something which catches us unprepared and hospitals are prepared. They know, you know, there are early warnings. We have to increase our capacities. We have to increase the supply of medicines or other required medical products to avenge the impacts of the heat stress, and reducing heat exposure, which is which may be at the community level, which may be at the institution level, which may be at the city level, and there are a lot of short, medium, and long-term measures. So these are crux of heat action plans, which framework which we are adapting. And the obvious question, which I also briefly talked, that why heat action plans? So is that they prevent deaths. If we want to prevent mortality and we don't want to allow a large section of the population to be sick due to heat, and there is where it is important we have these heat action plans which are there with the cities, states, and countries. And it's a commitment of the government to protect the vulnerable population who are more prone to the effects of the heat waves due to several reasons. If we have a heat action plan, it reduces chances of illness. It makes our cities future ready, and it increases the preparedness of hospital or the health centers. It reduces the labor productivity, heat days, reduced labor and opportunity loss. So there is a definitely a huge benefit of adopting these heat action plans, and they are also linked with the SDGs, the SDG 3, 9, 11, 13. These are our commitments to the global SDGs, where these action plans will help us strengthen for a climate resilient future. So as I talked about the tipping points, and therein, where these are the countries which started adapting the heat action plan. So it's not across the globe, but there are several countries now or the cities which have adopted the heat action plans. So this is about South Asia. We reviewed actually the heat action plans in South Asia. And while we reviewed this plan, we found that in South Asia, we have only Karachi as the only city which has actually a detailed action plan. While there are some planning instruments both in Sri Lanka as well as in Bangladesh, but they are still at country level, and there are no city action plans. And city action plans are very critical and very important, because cities are economic hotspots. Cities also have huge concentration of the vulnerable population, because they are also housed to the migrant population. So urban heat island is very prominent in the cities. So, and obviously by 2050, we have more than 50%. We have more people living in cities than in the villages. So obvious need to prioritize cities action plan across the globe. This is something I wanted to talk a small case of India, how our preparedness and adopting heat action plans have helped India. Dr. Ban also talked about it, that, one fact which I like to highlight, from 2015 to 2019, from 9 states to 23 states, which is clearly alarm, in terms of how heat waves are increasing across the country. And so there are only 9 such states which are affected by heat waves in year 2015, but by 2019 there were 23 states. So which clearly shows, the rise in number of heat waves across the country. I'll just talk about the actions. I think NDMA, we really have a very detailed kind of a plan and the guidelines which emerge from the NDMA, and that's where we hardly have any deaths this year due to the heat waves, and the mortality has reduced, though the number of vulnerable population exposed to heat has increased. So a lot of groundwork has been done by the NDMA, State Disaster Management Authority, city ULBs, and institutions like IIPH and several others who have done work to spread awareness and implementation. I'm just going to give you a broad account of how a heat action plan was evolved for a city of Rajkot. Rajkot is a medium-sized city which is in the western state of Gujarat. It's a rapidly growing city, both in terms of population, and is exposed to a lot of heat wave events. So these are the few steps I will talk about in detail. So I would not touch this later in my slide. So I think anytime you are looking at developing a heat action plan, one should really, it's not that one size would fit all. So I think this should not be a notion in our minds, and also with the policy makers, that if we just copy one action plan of one city and, it would be implemented. The Surat's conditions are different from Rajkot, and so are the Bhubaneswar conditions, and also many other countries, whether it's a Kathmandu or Colombo, or we are looking at Dhaka or Rajshahi. So there are different kind of factors which govern the same. And I think the first step when we started looking at the action plan, we looked at, what is the social and demographic composition of the city, what kind of urbanization and how fast it's urbanizing. And we looked at the historical overview of the heat waves in terms of, how heat waves are affecting the Rajkot, what has been the mortality or the morbidity, though there is not much which is readily available. What city overview, there are a lot of other components I'm not going to talk about in detail, but our starting point was to look at the city demography, look at the location, and also to look at what kind of a population, what kind of age groups, this information, and how rapidly is urbanizing, because it will help to identify the city characteristics based on their weather, climate, and other location patterns, migrant population. So when we started looking at that, I think the first thing which we collected information was on the heat wave days, because evidence is critical, because the evidence is critical both for the decision makers, policy makers, scientists, and also citizens alike. So I think when you're starting on developing, looking at a city, you might need to look at how weather heat is an important issue for this particular area or a region or a city. So if we look at the decade of 80, 81 to 90, there are only 2 heat wave incidents. It has grown to 22 in the decade of 2000, 91, 2000, and to 34 in 2001 and 10. So the first evidence which is required to kind of look at the characteristics of the heat waves and what kind of increase is happening within the city. The second factor which we collected information in India from the IMD, India Meteorological Center, and also the local AWS, which has put across several wards of the city. So we look at what kind of temperatures, both in terms of T max, T minimum. What are those what is the spread of the summer within the city, and what kind of the temperatures, average temperatures. And then we looked at the last 2 decades, both in terms of temperature and humidity, and observed, what kind of trends are observing in the city. So that's why we talked about climate adaptive action plans, because we are looking into the climatology parameters from the historical parameters as well as the future parameters as well. So what we observed that in the last, when we observed the data from 2001 to 2017, we observed that there was a rise of temperature by 1.2 degree in April, followed by March, and again May and June. There was relatively lower increase, but there is sizable increase in the temperature which is happening in the city. So this climatology is clearly produce evidence in terms of increasing number of hot days within the city, and also the temperature is much above the climatological mean for the city of Rajkot. So again we observed that even minimum temperature is rising. So it's not just a measure of maximum temperature which is responsible for heat stress, but also minimum temperature. So these evidence actually help a lot in terms of looking at what also identifying what could be the possible factors, maybe local factors which are impacting the rise or the global impacts of the heat stress. So I won't delve into much, but we also observed trends in the humidity, both RH 830 and RH evening. So there also we found that the mean, what here the trends were that we found that RH was decreasing. So these are important to understand how do we further plan our intervention for the city. So while we looked at the climatology, then we looked at the thermal hotspot maps. There are 2 ways by which we could have generated this hotspot maps. One is through remote sensing, and the other is to do some ground level campaigns of measuring the dry world temperatures and the wet world temperatures. The drawback being because we were looking at ward level. It's not just the temperature of city is not is a representative temperature from 1 or 2 meteorological stations which are generally placed in the cities. What we also wanted to look at what kind of different spatial variation which exists in the city. So we looked at the LSTs, where we look at the satellite remote sensing data, and then through that we looked at identify the heat hotspots within the city. So this is a map of the Rajkot, and where we have looked at land surface temperature. What again, we also looked at the temperature which are through the ambient air temperature, which is through the automated weather stations which are placed in the various wards of the Rajkot. So therein we are able to clearly see, which are the hotspots or urban heat islands in the city. So if you see the red and the orange area within the city, which are concentrated, on the western borders of the city and toward the south of the city. So these are the clear hotspots. And also we identified, even within the city, where are the hotspots. This information is important to identify your urban heat islands, as well as to have a focused and a targeted intervention. I will just give you an example how these interventions were made through these ward action plans. This is one scenario which we have shown for the month of the May. If so, on the one side, left side, if you can see the average monthly temperature for the month of May 2018. So if you look at the map, there are only around 8 wards which are in the temperature range of 40 to 42 degrees centigrade, and only 1 ward which is in 44 to 46 degree. But if we just have a 3-degree scenario, you have majority of the city, which is, the temperature is crossing 44 to 46. So this is a future scenario. So there we have, used this information from the RCPs to generate these future maps also, so that, that targeted interventions can be taken. So it's important that we identify heat hotspots within the city and the urban heat island city through the remote sensing technologies, and also through ambient data or temperature campaigns. We also did campaigns where we, we did campaigns spread across several wards, collecting the wet bulb and the dry bulb temperatures, and then understanding, which are the heat islands within the city. Once the heat hotspots are identified, the vulnerability mapping and assessment was done. And when we say vulnerability mapping, we talked about vulnerable groups and vulnerable areas, So this was done again at the ward level. This is an important slide because I think vulnerability is something which may vary from city to city and area to area, but there may be some common points as well. When you're looking at vulnerable areas, so obviously the informal settlements, slums, they are the vulnerable areas because of their conditions, minimal access to water, sanitations, which are important to cope with the heat stress conditions, and also minimal presence of household amenities in terms of fans or cooling infrastructure. Then several other factors, but urban heat islands. So obviously the areas which are urban heat islands, they are likely to be more vulnerable, and the industrial belts in many cases. So it's important to identify which are the vulnerable areas in the city, and second focus was the vulnerable groups. Again, the marginalized community who are the low-income group communities, and and a lot of elderly children, women, pregnant women, and also comorbidity. They are important part of the vulnerable groups because they are more prone to the impacts of the heat stress, and not just working individuals who are operating outside, but our research also found a lot of women who are working in-house, and especially who are working on the top floors. They are particularly vulnerable to the heat stress because of the thermal discomfort in the housing conditions and because of housing types. So again, when we look at the vulnerability assessment, we need to look at the water, electricity, access to health infrastructure, cooking, whether they are cooking inside or outside. Ventilation is very critical for the humidity, the type of housing, awareness, several other factors. I think these I won't delve much in details because the time is constrained. So what we arrived out is to identify, we looked at the cumulative vulnerability based on the several factors and identified which are the top priority wards for the government for the action. So therein, we identified certain wards where, the water supply was a constraint. So, the immediately actions were further coordinated by the municipal corporation to provide water tankers and also to ensure continued water supply. In certain areas, we found that, the housing issues were there, asbestos sheets, tin in certain areas, health awareness was low. So it was a targeted action which can be achieved through the ward level action plans, which IRADE has developed for the Rajkot and Bhubaneswar and also Delhi. So, so there is a focused intervention for tackling the impacts of the heat stress. And I very well remember one example particularly given by Professor Vikas Desai, who is also today here, that many times people think that, that planting trees is a solution. Why don't you increase the number of trees in a particular area? But that is something which won't work in Surat, because it's already a coastal city and a high humidity. So by increased plantation, you are increasing the humidity. So depending on the factors which are impacting the heat stress, we have to take action accordingly. And that's where there is a need for the focus action rather than a generalized action. So I think we need to broadly look at, how it is impacting the city, which sectors. Our surveys shows that, casual laborers, they are reporting the maximum wage loss, so identifying them, there has to be a targeted actions towards them. A lot of productivity loss is happening, which is being reported across the cities. Some evidence we produced on the heat vulnerability higher in poor, this urban poor working women. So also, so a lot of, if some evidence, this has helped us to further engage and provide suitable inputs for the policy as well. Early warning system and thresholds, they are the, I would say, they are the most important for any heat action plan. In absence of any early warning system, it's difficult to take a coordinated action and an effective action. So early warning systems are very well operated. We have both long-term, medium-term, and short-term early warning systems provided by IMD. And also cities, various cities are using the red, yellow, orange, red alert as for actually informing the community on the temperature on the temperatures and how to take action. But again, these early warning systems also need to consider humidity from the future point of view. They only just take into consideration the maximum temperature. Minimum temperatures are also equally important. And these heat stress thresholds, they vary from city to city. We have one detailed session by Dr. Ban last time, and the early warning system, we have another masterclass in early September by Professor Tyagi. So I won't be talking much, but I am just briefly sharing with you that these are very critical. Like heat thresholds, they vary across. This is one example where we worked with the RMC. So, where RMC's threshold, we found that, it should be brought down to 40 degrees. That's where, the mortality and starts within the city. So threshold is a point wherein, at the tipping point of the temperature, where, the mortality rises substantially within the city. So that's where we need to identify this threshold. So there are several methodologies for the same. This is important for a localized action to understand. This is very important. We need to understand our stakeholders whom we are likely to work with, whose capacities are to be built. So this is a broad framework for the engagement. So it's not just engagement with the ULBs. We have to look into the hospital. We have to look into the labor department who are responsible for providing water. Then water department who have to provide tankers. They shouldn't cut the water supply. Electricity is very critical, for providing relief in the heat. So power cut should not happen. Transport officers, again, there has to be mechanisms adopted in the transport offices. So there are a lot of coordination which is required right from the gardening to the health departments. So these framework is very essential for implementing heat action plan. And again, heat action plan is divided into various efforts or the action which are pre-summer, during summer, post-summer, and there are roles and responsibilities which are clearly highlighted on what should be done, and also preparing the emergency services. Sorry, the time is short. I'm not going to talk much about it, but I think this is an important slide where actions, what kind of actions, which could be short, medium, and the long term. Awareness campaigns are very important. Hoardings, posters, displaying on several locations, distribution of pamphlets, awareness workshops, especially for occupationally exposed communities, keeping gardens or the cooling shelters open, availability of the water. So there are a lot of actions which are being taken, where hospitals have very important role, primary health centers, by provision of they need to prepare for the emergencies, to keep adequate stock of the ORS, and also the setting up the cooling centers within the hospitals. So a lot of these actions are available and being used. Other critical steps, so a lot of these measures have been identified, which are which are short-term, medium-term measures. School roofing is very important, and again we are looking at how do we increase the passive cooling. So right from the view of the what kind of interventions need to be taken in the housing sector, in slums. So there are a lot of practices and which have been identified for the same. These are the advisories, which are widely distributed by the government, during the onset of the summer and also during the heat wave alerts. This is a pamphlet in Gujarati. This is very critical. I think monitoring systems are very important. This is something where a lot of work is required in terms of actually, recording and reporting the mortality and the morbidity. So these kind of frameworks are now being practiced, and these needs to be taken further, so that we have clear evidence and also clear check on the mortality due to heat waves. Again, this is stakeholder engagement through dissemination. Doctors are very important. So you need your multi-stakeholder capacity building workshops. Again, this is an example of advisories at prominent places. Importance of the local languages, campaigns. So I think a lot of good work has been done now, and again there are a lot of localized behavioral patterns which also needs to be understood and be part of the heat action plans. There is one training module which we have for the doctors, heat action plans. Sorry, I took more time than what was expected, but thank you for your patient listening. Thank you, sir. Over to Tyagi, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Tyagi, sir.
Good evening, Rohit, and compliments for a very comprehensive presentation covering from the global scenario to the very local, up to the ward level action plans, and going through all the aspects. I think the management of heat stress, climate adaptability, projection of the future scenarios, and how do you do the capacity building. So all the aspects have been comprehensively covered. We had an opening remarks by Professor Jyoti Parikh, she set up the background about the IPCC and the urgency for which at the global, regional, and the national and local level we have to address to the increasing frequencies of the heat waves in the future. Then Dr. Bhan has brought out very clearly the initiatives which are being taken by WMO, WHO, Global Heat Health Information Network in Sahin and Iradi, and the various NGOs to sensitize and about the dangers and the challenges of the heat waves in the future. And very detailed presentation by Rohit covering all aspects, I must say, giving the historical background of the heat waves which are happening in the different parts of the world. So it is a global challenge, but the regional variations and its action has to be taken at the local level as brought up to the ward level. So naturally, this is bound to generate a lot of questions, but we have got time constraints, but we have a number of questions. So I'll go through some of them, which Rohit can address, and maybe the Bhan Sahab, if he's there also, the question pertains to him. He can also. So I can start with the first question, which again brings out that the heat stress also affects locally, and not only the human being, but even in your background, if you have a kitchen garden, the flowering is not leading to the fruits. Is it because of the temperature variation, climate change? So we can't attribute everything to climate change, but does, yes. So this is one of the questions raised by some of our participants from Udaipur. So Rohit, the impact of heat stress on the crops or on so it has to be also factored in, which is the impact of which is being felt by many.
Sir, I think this is an important question, and as I said that the current heat action plans, they have more focus on the human health at the moment, but lot of work is required to assess the impacts of this climate variability and heat waves on the agriculture on particular crops. There are some studies, but obviously we can't directly attribute these factors, but there has to be more research into this area, how heat stress is affecting the agriculture and also affecting the crop. So there is some clear evidence in terms of shifting of the crops to the higher altitudes, even emergence of the new pests which were not there. One of our study done in the Himalayan region has also identified the same. But in terms of the direct impacts on the on a specific crop, that needs to be done in detail. Yes, sir. That's what I should say. If Dr. Ban would like to add, then he may add some. Yes, sir.
Sir, are you there?
Sir, he's not there. I just observed he's not there.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The next question comes again with the Ahmedabad heat action plan. Obviously, to come with one is the health index. What is the best health index which is being asked? Second is also about how those thresholds are being determined. What are the data? Is it the mortality, morbidity, or something else?
See, in terms of this heat health index and looking at the thresholds, so these is evolving. I think a lot of methodologies are evolving. So there is no universal methodology to calculate these thresholds, like what in Indian context, and when we look at Indian cities, we have used mortality as the factor in terms of the excess deaths happening because of the heat. In many cases, it's difficult to pinpoint whether the deaths has been directly caused due to heat because of several factors and also the comorbidity. But if we look at the excess deaths and then compare it with the temperatures, excess temperatures which are observed, then that is a way where the heat health index has been determined and calculated in Indian cities, and also this has been done for Ahmedabad, Rajkot, and Bhubaneswar alike. So,
thank you, Rohit. Deepak Sharma is asking about Rajkot, that
yes, sir.
The areas which are showing the hotspots, is it because of the industrialization or the density of population? So what are the factors which are contributing to the hotspots?
Yes. Yes, sir. So there are several factors. I think this is an observation which we also had in Delhi, where in certain peripheral rural areas on the western side. So it also has to do with the location of which is an also important factor. Whether it is a hotspot or not. But urbanization, we found that the locations which are more industrial and which were more busy due to the traffic, they showed higher temperatures compared to the areas which have parks or greener areas or water bodies. So there is a clear linkage when we talk about industrialization and urbanization, where more such urban heat hotspots are emerging.
Tushar is asking about Ahmedabad heat action plan. you have very well covered, and it is a very successful heat action plan which has been able to bring down the mortality and morbidity in the city, and also being followed by other cities. So we might throw some more light about the Ahmedabad heat action plan and what are their future strategies.
So a lot of learnings from Ahmedabad heat action plan. I think they form the base of the template for heat action plans in the country, because also it shows a lot of importance of intercoordination amongst the agencies for effective action. So that was, I think, the most important learning from the Ahmedabad from the Ahmedabad heat action plan. And it was a tipping point, because before Ahmedabad, it was not considered as a much of a threat to the human lives. So it was a tipping point, and that's where, you know, a lot of research and action started happening. In terms of the mitigation strategies, I think it has to do a lot with the intervention on various levels, whether it's a cool rooftops or the passive cooling for buildings, green spaces, and also blue spaces within the city. So there's a lot of mix. There is a lot of strategies which we think should be used for the same, and not just one or two. But I think air conditioning dependence has to be further reduced. Ahmedabad is urbanizing very fast, and also the air cooling demand is very high for the same. So that's wherein we need to kind of, for effective mitigation, we need to have both short, medium, and long-term interventions. Some of these we have kind of detailed, but I was not able to share much at length during my presentation.
Okay, Deepak Sharma is asking for, in addition to city heat action plans for rural areas, are being addressed, and the district level heat action plans or the state level heat action plans, if they are so, we may like to highlight.
Sir, we have a mechanism under NDMA to develop the district heat action plans, and they are very much into practice, and there are many states within the country where, you know, these district action plans have been developed. So they are available also on the NDMA site. So definitely, it's not though we are talking much about the urban areas, but there are also district level action plans which cover both rural as well as the urban populations.
Okay, Bindu has asked about the mechanism to give scoring to vulnerability parameters.
I think there is a composite methodology which we have used to give scoring. It depends on, you know, what are the critical factors which are affecting the health of the community. So we have used several range of factors which, and also then designated them as a low, medium, high. So in my presentation, I showcase a slide on the basic service infrastructure, access to water, public health, the public health centers, availability, electricity, sanitation facilities. So we have developed a composite methodology to arrive at the vulnerability for the same. We can kind of respond to this answer in detail by sending a response through email.
Okay, so we have overshot the time, but I'll take the last question from Ankan. He's asking, are there any specific attributes in action plan to consider for climate migrants?
Yes, sir. I think it's a very important question, because a lot of migrant population which come to the cities, they are new to the language of the city. So a lot of linguistic issues are there, you know, when the communication and dissemination is happening. That is one important attribute, you know, when we are covering. So there is a lot of, we need to assess and see, you know, where are these migrant communities which are actually who are actually migrated to these cities, and they are highly prone otherwise, because these conditions are new. So in terms of the temperature and the humidity and the climate extreme. So from a migrants' point of view, these are two important factors. They also don't have access to the piped water supply or the regular water supply, shelter issues. So a lot of issues are related to the same, which we consider actually when we look at the informal settlements and the slums where generally these migrant populations settle. Is that, sir, right, or are there any other dimension which is required to get
right. And apart from the migrants which are going to be because of economic reasons, the climate change also going to throw up a lot of migrants from the areas where the coastal areas where sea level rise is going to take place, or somewhere the forest deforestation, so things like that happening. So that will add another dimension to it. Anyway,
yes,
thank
sir.
you so much.
I'll just, sir, add one point, because this is also going to produce a lot of climate migrants, because this increasing heat waves, they will actually force this vulnerable population to migrate from the cities. So might be there are a lot of heat hotspots which are emerging in large cities like Ahmedabad or Delhi or the coastal cities, so not many people would be able to work in those conditions. So that's where, a lot of even reverse migration may happen because of the increasing heat stress. So, the vulnerability will increase specifically for the cities and especially for the coastal cities because of the rise in the wet bulb thresholds.
Thank you, Rohit. And Ananya is, I think, posted. One is that Erare and Sign is bringing out a newsletter, a fortnightly newsletter, which gives updates on the various activities globally, regionally, and at the national level, local level being done related to heat waves, heat stress, entire spectrum management to the response. And also, if you have some more queries, you could write to Rohit Magotra. His email ID is being shared by Ananya. So thank you very much for your active participation and for your questions. I'm sure there will be many more. So please don't hesitate to write to Rohit. I'm sure you'll get a good response. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think even I'm happy to announce that we are taking this work forward to 2 more countries in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. So we'll be working with 2 partners in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka to actually support developing such targeted ward level climate adaptive heat action plans for 2 cities in one each in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So we are taking this engagement further, and we and if there are any suggestions and also collaboration possibilities, we'll be happy to share our knowledge and engage with you and other cities for developing heat action plans and working to build climate resilient South Asia. Thank you, sir. Nimisha?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're there. Okay, I think we can close with thanking everybody.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your participation, and to the attendees and to the esteemed panelists. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.